I've been asked today to sort of give a perspective of where sustainability, the whole concept is, sort of a global perspective. And I really come from advising businesses around the world on sustainable development. And actually, ironically, it's my 20th anniversary of doing that type of work as well. What I really want to bring is some sort of observations I've made about what I call the narrative on sustainable development, and some observations I made about how I see this narrative getting fresher, more can-do and more compelling, partly driven by the climate change debate and also partly driven, ironically, by the current economic downturn. So this is going to be a very sort of broad brush view of where sustainable development's going. Firstly, what is sustainable development for? And a provocation I often make, and I'm not sure if I completely agree with this, but as a provocation, it's a very interesting sort of place to start, is sustainable development making this possible for 9 billion people? There will be 9 billion people on the planet in 2050. And as I drove out to the station this morning, there's a big Christian Aid sign saying, "Together we can eradicate poverty." But what nobody is saying, what does the eradication of poverty look like? And if you go into Beijing or if you go into Delhi, you'll see millions and billions of people trying to get to be middle class as quickly as possible. And their aspirations is this type of lifestyle. And it's really interesting that in a sustainable development movement, which I've been involved in for 20 years, we haven't spent enough time in actually talking about what the end game is. What do we mean? We've done this Make Poverty History campaign and let's save the world from climate change and rainforest destruction. And I think what we're beginning to see in a far more sophisticated way are these two debates coming together. If you fundamentally disagree with that provocation, the next question, if we're doing a whole day workshop sort of stuff, is what does sustainable development look like then? What will the world look like? What will our lifestyles look like in 2050, given there'll be 9 billion people, who hopefully none of whom live in any form of poverty whatsoever? At the moment, we know that's not possible. There's too much carbon out there, which is changing the weather. Too many people, by the way economics works, are actually locked into poverty. They can't get out of poverty because of the way the economics works. Yeah? When we actually get ourselves out of poverty, we're observing new trends such as depression, obesity, diabetes, where somehow our bodies and our lifestyles don't quite fit with the way our bodies work, and we've got these new diseases which are causing quite significant problems. I think like the cost of obesity is going to be £20 million a year in the UK in 5 years' time or something. These are amazing numbers. And there's not enough raw materials to actually provide people with all those toasters and all those plasma TVs. So it's not as if that lifestyle is politically incorrect. It's just plainly unachievable. The dynamic is that image for many people suddenly feels politically uncomfortable. Oh, that's consumption. That's bad. That's wicked. That's evil. That's causing all the problems. So then that returns me back to this sort of other narrative or this other question. Okay, if that's fundamentally wrong, the debate we need to have with ourselves and the debate we need to have with China and the debate we need to have with India is, what does success look like? What are we actually trying to achieve? I remember talking to an Indian NGO woman, and she said poverty is a social problem. Wealth is an environmental problem. Or she said the working classes in India is a social problem, the middle classes is an environmental problem, which is we just don't have enough stuff to get to that type of lifestyle. And that's why we get ourselves in this sense of hopelessness. We know deep down that too many people out there, too many political leaders, too many business people want 9 billion of those lifestyles, but we also do the maths and we see the science, and we also know people's attitudes, and we just know those two are unachievable. And so you get this sort of complete and utter sense of hopelessness. But one thing we all forget, and I was amazed how the sustainable development debate don't exploit one basic principle of good news, is that if we agree that we live in an unsustainable world, I've got some really good news. Unsustainability is unsustainable. And the clue is in the word. Yeah. So unsustainability is the journey from now to a sustainable state. The only thing we have in control is the sustainable outcome we have. And it's really interesting because there's lots of visions of sustainability. So what type of sustainability do we want? What sustainable outcome are we talking about? And this really matters because it changes the narrative, because we talk a lot about saving the rainforest and saving the planet. What I'm beginning to sort of articulate here is, no, we're talking about saving the lifestyle we have chosen for the whole world. And it's a really important difference, because if we said, actually, no, we're going to let nature be the chooser here, we're going to let nature decide what sustainable outcome we have, we end up with a James Lovelock vision of sustainability. He doesn't say, this is my vision of a sustainable world. He talks about, by 2100, lots of people living a very fulfilling, happy life. The only difference is there's 3 billion people and not the 9 billion, and 6 billion have died in famine and war and environmental problems. And so the journey from an unsustainable world to the Lovelock sustainable world, whilst the outcome is quite nice for those who survive, is pretty devastating and pretty crappy for everybody else who doesn't quite make it on the way. But it is a journey to sustainability. We just let nature work it all out for us. We could actually agree, no, let's not make poverty history. Let's keep India and China and Africa in famine and poverty, because that way there'll be enough stuff. And of course we already know that's politically and commercially and morally utterly unacceptable. So we're working really, really hard in these countries to give people the cash to buy more stuff and use more carbon, when we already know there's not enough to go around. So we have to work out how to do this. We could talk about a massive change in lifestyle. If only everybody could live in Suffolk with 2 acres of land. I don't know if you've seen that programme, the BBC programme, It Isn't Easy Being Green. Yeah? All we have to do is go and buy a derelict watermill, convert it, and everything's fine. And if you measure his carbon footprint, it's fantastic. The problem we have, if you're a politician or a business leader, is we don't have 20 million watermills to move people into. And so I argue that a true vision of sustainable lifestyles has to be obtainable, achievable, accessible for everybody who inhabits this country, let alone the whole world. Which means we have to think about cities as well. It's not a very good image, it's a picture of Waterloo Station, lots of London. The idea being, lots of people living in a very small space. How do we make sustainability accessible for those people? When you think about it then, and you think about what people want from life, what's politically convenient, what's commercially convenient, is this vision of 9 billion of them is actually politically and commercially really convenient. If only we could pull it off. All that we have to do, and I say all as ironically as it's possible by emphasising a word, is make all that stuff in a different way, or more profoundly, recreate the satisfaction people have from living that lifestyle in a completely different way. So it's both re-engineering toasters, but also re-engineering people's values and what makes them think, I am a happy person and this is how I'm going to live my life.